The first knock came from directly behind my head. Not at the door, not at the window. Inside the wall, 3 slow taps, right beside the bunk where I was lying. I froze so hard I could hear the springs under my back creak. Then it happened again. Same place, same rhythm, like someone on the other side knew exactly where my head was. I grabbed the flashlight from the floor and aimed it at the wood paneling, half expecting to see an animal trapped between the boards. But the beam only shook across old pine stained dark with age. Then my radio crackled on the table and a voice whispered, "Don't answer it." I was alone in that cabin. My name's Evan. I was 28, and that summer I was filling in as a seasonal fire lookout assistant just outside Yellowstone National Park, near an old ranger sector that had been mostly abandoned after storm damage closed half the access roads. My job wasn't complicated. Check the service trails. Log any wildlife activity near the closed campgrounds. Stay overnight in the old ranger cabin twice a week, because the drive back to the main station took nearly 2 hours after dark. The cabin itself sat alone in a clearing surrounded by lodgepole pines so thick they blocked the moonlight. It had one radio, one backup generator, one rusted propane heater, and walls that looked older than anything still standing out there should have been. The first few nights were quiet enough that I started feeling stupid for being uneasy. Every shift followed the same routine. I'd check the perimeter, lock the outer storage shed, note weather changes in the logbook, and call the main station at 10, midnight, and 3. Most of the time, the only sounds were branches scraping the roof and the old cabin settling in the cold. But on my 4th night, before the knocking started, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The previous shift log had already been filled out. My handwriting, same slant, same ugly capital E I always wrote. Except I hadn't written it. The time stamped beside it was 9:14 p.m. I didn't even arrive until 9:32. I stared at that page for a full minute, convincing myself I was tired, that maybe I'd filled part of it in at the station earlier and forgot. But I never did paperwork early. Never. Then I noticed the last line. He only knocks after midnight. I laughed when I saw it because it felt too ridiculous to be real. Some ranger prank, some old joke for the new guy. I even radioed dispatch and asked if anyone had been inside the cabin before me. The woman at base sounded confused and said nobody had used that station in 11 days. I almost mentioned the handwriting. I almost mentioned the note. But saying it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that yet. Around midnight, the generator flickered once, then again. The single ceiling light dimmed until the cabin looked bruised with shadow. That was when the first knock came from inside the wall next to the sink. 3 taps, hollow, deliberate. I stood there listening. Nothing. Then from the wall near the stove, 3 more. Slowly moving, not random, not pipes. Something tracing the inside of the cabin. I stepped backward and called out before I could stop myself. "Hello?" The second I said it, the tapping stopped. Total silence. Even the trees outside seemed to go still. Then my own voice answered from the radio. "Hello?" Same tone, same panic. 1 second after mine, I stared at the speaker. No static, no call tone. Just my voice coming back at me, like someone had recorded it and played it from inside the cabin. I snatched the radio up and called dispatch again. "Base, this is Cabin 7. Do you copy?" Static hissed. Then my voice came back first. "Base, this is Cabin 7. Do you copy?" Then silence. Dispatch never answered. That's when I noticed something worse. The knock started again, this time from beneath the floor, directly under my boots. 3 slow taps. Then 3 more under the table. Then 3 beside the door. Like something underneath me was circling the room, stopping wherever I looked last. I backed into the corner with the flashlight in one hand and the radio in the pack, other, trying to tell myself there had to be some rational explanation. Loose boards, echoes, faulty radio, sleep deprivation, anything. But every explanation fell apart when the knocking moved into the wall behind me, right at shoulder height. Then higher, then right beside my ear. I ran outside without even remembering and locking the door. Cold mountain air hit my face hard enough to hurt. I stood on the porch breathing like I'd been underwater too long, staring at the cabin while my flashlight beam bounced across the windows. Nothing moved inside. No shadow, no person, no animal tearing through the boards. Just that old cabin, sitting silent in the trees, like it had been waiting for me to leave it. I should have gotten in the truck and driven back right then, I know that. But the truck wouldn't start. The engine turned once, coughed, and died. Again. Same thing. My battery had been replaced 2 weeks earlier. I sat there trying again until the radio in the passenger seat crackled by itself. Then my own voice said, very softly, "Don't leave me in here." I dropped the radio like it burned me. I wish I could say I drove out anyway. I didn't. I sat in that truck for maybe 10 minutes staring at the cabin, while the porch light buzzed weakly above the door. Then the light switched off. Nobody touched it. It just clicked off. A second later, someone knocked from inside the truck bed. 3 slow taps. I nearly tore the ivy, handle off getting back out. My flashlight shook so badly the beam blurred across the clearing. There was nobody there. No footprints in the dirt except mine. No movement in the trees. Then I heard it again. Knock. 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 Inside the cabin wall. Even from 20 feet away I could hear it. That was the moment I stopped trying to explain it. I went back inside because somehow standing in the dark trees felt worse than standing in that cabin. I locked the door, pushed the table against it, sat on the bunk with the flashlight pointed at the far wall and waited. For almost an hour, nothing happened. I started thinking maybe fear had gotten ahead of me. Maybe isolation does things to your head in places like that. Maybe the note in the logbook was from some sleep-deprived ranger losing it the same way I was. Then, at 2:17 a.m., the security monitor by the desk turned on by itself. It was an old black and white camera feed connected to a motion sensor near the tool shed behind the cabin. Grainy, usually useless, but now it showed the back of the cabin clearly. And standing at the edge of the trees was someone in a ranger jacket, facing the camera, not moving. My first thought was another ranger had come to mess with me. My second thought hit harder. The jacket was mine. Same reflective strip on the sleeve, same tear near the pocket. I walked slowly toward the monitor, telling myself the image was distorted. But the closer I got, the clearer it became. It was me, standing perfectly still in the trees, looking toward the cabin. The live timestamp in the corner matched the clock above the sink. I turned toward the back window. Nothing there. I looked back at the screen. The figure was closer now, just a few feet from the shed. I hadn't seen it move. It had simply changed position between blinks. My radio hissed. Then my own voice whispered, "You left me outside." I threw the radio across the room. It hit the wall and broke open, batteries rolling under the table, but the speaker still crackled. "You left me outside." I don't remember deciding to run. 1 second I was staring at that screen, and the next I was out the front door with my keys in my hand. This time the truck started instantly, like it had never had a problem. I backed down that dirt road so fast the tires threw gravel into the trees. I didn't look in the mirrors for the first mile. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard. But eventually instinct made me glance up. And in the rearview mirror, for just a second, in the red glow of the brake lights, I saw someone sitting in the truck bed. Same jacket, same face, crouched low, smiling at me through the back window. I slammed the brakes so hard the truck fishtailed sideways. When I jumped out with the flashlight, the bed was empty. Nothing there except the broken radio. Sitting in the middle of the metal bed, still whispering static. I made it back to the main station just before sunrise and told them the generator had failed and I wanted off overnight rotation. I didn't tell them the rest because hearing it out loud would have sounded insane. The older ranger at the desk just stared at me for a long second and asked one question. Did it knock from the walls first? I asked him what he meant. He only looked down and slid an old incident report across the counter. Same cabin. 6 years earlier. Seasonal ranger missing. Last note in the report said responding officers found the cabin empty, except for repeated knocking heard inside the walls after they entered. I quit 2 days later. I haven't been back to Yellowstone since. But sometimes, usually just after midnight, my phone lights up with a blocked number. And when I finally made the mistake of answering last month, I heard 3 slow knocks, followed by my own voice asking why I never let it back inside.